Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Talking Insomnia episode in which we have a guest. Seth, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, Daniel.
Super nice having you. And for everyone tuning in here, me and Seth, we connected on Twitter. It was actually, I think randomly was searching for that like insomnia hashtag. So a tweet from you. I was like, oh, this is very insightful. And it's like, who is this person? Then we started talking.
Yeah.
So with that said, yeah, let's, I know your story, but please share, tell us a little bit first about like just briefly who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Seth. I am an adult sleep coach. I live in Denver, Colorado. I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now. And so I work with, adults in Colorado and across the United States, just to kind of explore their sleep issues and try to help them through it. I've experienced a lot of what they experience. So that kind of helps me with being able to, really empathize with them, be able to, I've walked in their shoes, so I feel like I can help them through that knowledge.
Absolutely. And that's actually exactly where I wanted to start. So I think I remember you telling me that you had trouble sleeping for quite a long time. So if you don't mind, like what happened and what's your story there?
Sure. So basically, when in my younger years, I had kind of sleep issues on and off, but nothing too terrible. And then I graduated from college and I started a career as a journalist. So obviously with that type of career, there's a lot of deadline pressure. There's a lot of, pressure to perform and put out good articles. So just a lot of pressure. And I think that stress sort of led me to develop some unhealthy sleep habits, and just the stress itself affected my sleep. So it kind of turned into chronic insomnia, where just, every week I was dealing with, having trouble staying asleep, or, waking up way too early, or just worrying about sleep constantly. So it just snowballed and got to the point where, I just felt like I was walking around tired for most of my weeks. So it really was a tough go of it. And I probably spent a good 15 years dealing with that.
Wow. And was it like, you obviously worked with a lot of clients that have trouble sleeping. Like, would you say like you had pretty significant trouble sleeping, or it was more on and off, or?
It was, I guess I would go through, so probably out of the average week, I probably had about 4 or 5 nights of bad sleep.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I said, I'd be up until 2 in the morning until I could fall asleep, or wake up at 2 in the morning, couldn't go back to sleep. So that was just a very common pattern for me for a long time.
100%. And this was like about 15 years ago or so that it started, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it lasted a long time.
And now, did you go through kind of the common things that we hear people talk about, how you tried, the melatonin, CBD, yoga, all things of that nature?
Yeah, I tried a lot of that stuff, especially melatonin. I went to see a doctor fairly early on, and he prescribed me some sleeping pills. And so it was an antidepressant that he just prescribed for me. And that didn't work, and it had just side effects, like odd side effects. And so I ditched those pretty quickly, and didn't try to ask another doctor about it for a while. But then years later, I did ask another doctor, and he recommended cognitive behavioral therapy, which I had never heard of before. So it kind of planted the seed, although I didn't look into that for a while. But yeah, I did try, all the things you find on the internet and different types of herbal remedies, and just nothing really seemed to solve the underlying problem.
Yeah. And throughout all these years, was it like, did you get to a point where you're like, kind of give up, or you kept trying different things like throughout this whole story?
I guess I would reach points where I just decided I'm just going to tolerate this for now. It's just kind of the way things are. I'll just live with it and deal with it. And then, I'd kind of feel the need to change, so I'd go out and try something else. But I did finally reached a point a few years ago where I was just like, I can't picture myself living with this for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And so something needs to change. I know it's not sleeping pills, so I have to figure out some other way to get help.
And what happened?
So actually, I just So I knew that there were pediatric sleep consultants that were helping families with their kids sleeping well. And so I just kind of wondered out loud, is there such a thing as an adult sleep consultant? So I hopped on Google and did a search, and I saw that there were some programs up and coming that kind of taught you how to be a sleep coach. I found a couple news articles about, I hired a professional sleep coach and they changed my sleep or whatever. And so originally I was thinking about hiring someone. And then I was just thinking, well, sleep is interesting to me. And I would love to be able to kind of teach myself how to, learn the fundamentals and learn the things that are affecting my sleep and then how to change those. And then, maybe eventually create a business out of it too. So it seemed like kind of a win-win-win where I could, solve my own problems, learn about it, and start a business too.
How interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard this particular story before, like how you not only were looking to sleep better yourself, but actually eventually already at that point, you were thinking of teaching others. Very interesting. And you had heard about CBT, but were you looking for something specific or?
At that point, I still didn't know much about CBT. I just liked the idea of, when I was first thinking about hiring somebody, I liked the idea of somebody coming in and they already knew about sleep. They already knew, they could look at what was going on with me and they'd seen it before and they could just kind of create a plan for me. So that was what originally interested me. But then when I did start to look into CBT and I just saw the kind of the structured approach and really, got into the information, everything just clicked. And for me, it was like, okay, I recognize that for myself. I recognize this. It's interesting to learn, oh, I've been doing that wrong the whole time. So that everything really clicked for me. And so that's when I kind of started on my journey to solve my own problems using CBT and other approaches.
And other approaches as well. And so talk more about this, like in what shape or form did you come across CBT and what other things did you find helpful?
So when I was getting certified as a sleep coach, I had a couple of different certifications, and one of them is in CBT, and another one, it's called an integrative adult sleep coach. So it focuses on, from everything from nutrition to pretty much to your exercise levels to, pretty much everything in your lifestyle that can affect, even including your, social circles and things like that. And so kind of taking that comprehensive approach combined with CBT really, I felt kind of gave me the well-rounded knowledge that I needed. So yeah, specifically, changing my sleep schedule and really making it so I was waking up at the same time every day so that I wasn't sleeping in after a rough night of sleep. That was huge for me. Learning to, the negative sleep thought part of it, that really was big for me too, because, I would sit around all day being like, I am going to feel tired today. I'm not going to do well at work. I hope that I sleep well tonight, but I'm afraid that I won't. And so those thoughts just kind of kept circulating around throughout the day. It just kept me in this pattern of just worrying about sleep and kind of fearing it a little bit. And it just kind of felt mysterious to me and unpredictable. So once I learned how to not worry so much and how to deal with my own thoughts, that was also really, really effective for me.
100%. And staying on that topic for a second, so you identified, you saw that, yeah, I have all these negative thoughts and it's probably not good for me. How did you work on that? How did you change that?
Let's see. Well, part of it, some of the specific thoughts like, okay, I did get a rough night of sleep last night, but I'm going to do fine. And I've had bad nights of sleep before and I can perform regularly. So I know that's kind of a common negative sleep thought that you change to positive, but it did work for me. Just knowing that I'm going to be okay. So don't worry about it. Just go out and do your thing today and you'll be fine. So that was kind of a big one. And just, also learning not to fear whether I'm going to fall asleep at night. That was a harder one to change, but I found that once I did change that one, it just makes it so much easier for me. I have my nighttime routine. And so I dim the lights. I listen to an audiobook before I go to sleep. I just follow this routine every night. And, and when it's time to, turn out the lights and roll over and go to sleep, there's no worries about it. It just kind of happens. And so that's a beautiful place to be after so long of fearing it.
Yeah.
So.
And was it also like the first one we talked about, it seemed fairly like deliberate and fairly, I guess you were in a good place. You must have been pretty motivated, et cetera, because it sounds like it was fairly easy for you to go from like, okay, I'm going to be positive about my day and doing that. And then the nighttime one, like the way I would formulate it and the way I usually talk about it is like, you go to bed and then you're kind of unattached. You're like, if I sleep, that's great. If I don't sleep, that's okay too, kind of going in that direction. Were those the type of thoughts that you started having, if you will?
Yeah. I think that sounds pretty familiar. Yeah, it was more just, like even if I don't have a good night of sleep tomorrow or tonight, tomorrow will be fine. And learning about just the body's natural drive to sleep. So if you have a bad night of sleep, you're more likely to sleep well the next night, just because your body wants to catch up on sleep. And so just sort of trusting that my body wants to sleep, that it's going to do what it can to recover the next night. I'm not thinking several nights ahead. Like, am I going to have a week of bad sleep? I'm just thinking about tonight, and that, I'm probably recover tomorrow night if I don't sleep well. So it just really reduced the worry about it.
Very, very cool. And then this process going from like you had trouble sleeping for like so many years, and the process of going from there to like, you know what, I think I sleep okay now.
Mm-hmm.
How long was that process?
I would say, let's see, it's hard to remember, but I would say it probably took maybe if I would guess maybe 3 to 6 months.
Okay, yeah.
Like that. It's sort of a gradual process, and I kind of experimented with different things over that time, and really worked on just kind of reinforcing a lot of those thoughts and behaviors. So it took time, but it's funny because now it's still, after having been in that cycle for 15 years, it still feels strange for me to get a good night of sleep. So every time it happens, I wake up and I'm like, that was pretty cool. Like that, it still has a novelty, sort of.
Oh man, I'm just so happy. It's always like, as I'm sure it's the same for you, just like hearing a random person say that they sleep well just feels good. And just like hearing you say I'm sleeping good, and I'm just so happy to hear that. Super happy to hear this. And
Thank you.
And okay, so that, and by the way, such an important point there. Like now in retrospect, you like, it was a while ago, and you kind of like, it probably took me 3 to 6 months. I think a lot of people, when they hear this that are maybe new to this channel, will be like, oh my gosh, 3 to 6 months, that is a long time. And I can totally relate to that, because when you have trouble sleeping, 3 months is a really long time. But then again, if you have like put everything in perspective,
Mm-hmm.
If you invest 3 months, 3 to 6 months, and you sleep well for the rest of your life, it's so worth it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's where I'm at now, is that I feel like I have the tools and the knowledge to where, if I encounter a rough patch of sleep, I feel like I can kind of problem solve and readjust things and kind of self-diagnose a little bit, and to have confidence in that ability going forward for the next however many years is pretty huge.
Very cool. And so, okay, so we cover the story, started trouble sleeping, you're now doing better. And this was like maybe 2 years ago or something like that, or?
Yeah, 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago. And then what happened? Like, did you pretty much immediately after that start your sleep coaching business, or did it take a while after that, or what happened?
Yeah, so I got my certifications, and then it was just kind of a slow process just to really feel confident about my coaching, and to start, getting more clients and building that side of the business up. But I did try to just start it right away, and just try to get into it and try to start working with people and really get those interactions and start building my confidence.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been about, 2.5 years. And just, every person I work with and I see them go through the same change that I went through, that's been the really rewarding part about the whole thing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And let's talk a little bit about that. You know, when I guess like yourself that are coaches or therapists or whatnot, I think it's always good. I personally, I always like to learn, but I think it's always also good for the audience to learn to hear about others approaches, etc. So let's say you're working with a new client, and you do mostly like face-to-face, right? Either traditional or meaning your coaching is based on kind of face-to-face visits, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah, either through Zoom or through phone calls.
And if you, let's say you have a new client, what's the first visit with a new client like with you?
So basically, I'll have given them intake forms so I can gather information from them and really get a snapshot of their life and see what are their thoughts around it, what are their behaviors, and what's their just general lifestyle looks like. And so once I've got that information, then I talk with them and just ask follow-up questions, and I see that this is happening, or that this is how you feel about this. Now tell me more about that. So it's more information gathering, so we have the complete picture. And then
Very
from
cool.
there, we can start working on, developing a specific sleep plan that touches on these various things that might be affecting their sleep.
Oh, so you, it sounds like you then, it really depends maybe from the specific person where you focus on the initial intervention, if you will, or do you have some things that you always do in the beginning?
Well, so it does vary, and that's kind of where what I was talking about with the having both the CBT certification and then the integrative adult certification. So CBT is more structured from what I've seen, and so it does have that pretty standard structure. And then integrative adult sleep coaching has more of a you're looking at all these different areas that some of them might not be touched upon with CBT. And so if you identify some things with that, then you might look at those starting forward too. So it is really individualized, and I try to start with things that should have the biggest impact first, and then kind of work from there, just like the CBT approach too.
And tell me more about the more integrative approach. Like, what are some, like, let's say, one big problem that you often find that you can start working on?
Let's see. Well, that one, I guess it's similar to CBT, where it does talk about the beliefs and the belief system and thoughts and everything. So some of it kind of expands on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I try to incorporate things from both CBT and that in there. So it really does spend time really focusing on what are their beliefs about sleep and negative beliefs, and how can we kind of shift those a little bit.
Very interesting. I think, sounds, I recognize a lot here, meaning I think with kind of the traditional CBT-I, often I think the problem with that is that it's so focused on like these two behavioral things, like sleep restriction, stimulus control, do that, and you'll do better. But I think although CBT stands for like cognitive, right? Cognitive education, I think that's often overlooked. And do you agree with me that the educational part, exploring beliefs, is maybe even more important than those behavioral medications, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the foundations of the whole thing. And so I think it's definitely worth spending more time on, and really kind of digging into that with each person, just to get an idea of where they stand and where we can make adjustments that could be helpful in that area.
Yeah. All right. So I think I told you that I like to ask guests, like, okay, what's your insomnia insight?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me that I learned is just how a lot of times the harder you try to sleep, the harder it gets away from you. And so I remember many nights where I was just laying in bed, and like, maybe if I just try harder, I'm just gonna be stubborn. I'm gonna lay here. I'm gonna try to sleep, and it'll happen. And that would just go on for hours and hours and hours. I didn't know about the stimulus control stuff. I didn't know that I was making my bed a cue for wakefulness. And so I did that for years. And so finally learning that if I just stop trying so hard, and if I just try to kind of distract myself from that, and I can go do something else in a different room, or just do breathing exercises somewhere else, just anything I can do to kind of reduce me actually trying, that can help. And so once I've learned that, that's been an enormous help. Just that I spent way too much time trying unsuccessfully to sleep.
100%. Yeah. I think that's the one, actually, in my personal opinion, that is the one, and I think, it's so helpful and educational, I think, the way you describe stimulus control here, because a lot of people, I think, not, no judgment here on their own. Like, I was going to say people get it wrong, but that's because they're taught wrong. I think the teaching there often isn't really good, meaning you're often told, like, okay, if you can't sleep in 30 minutes, just get out of bed, go back to, like, it's very, the way it's taught, it almost can become an increased effort, right? If you're like, okay, I gotta sleep now in 30 minutes. It can almost be like you try harder. The way you describe it makes perfect sense. You're like, stimulus control is a way to try less.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not exactly. It seems counterintuitive, but it works.
100%. Very, very cool. And so I was going to ask you about that one, because I'm sure you kind of already answered it, but let's spend like a little more time on it. Like, when people say, okay, when I'm awake at night, like I wake up at like 2 a.m. and I can't sleep, like, what should I do? What do you answer to that one?
So I do go into the stimulus control and just say that it's time, it's kind of time to stop. Don't just lay there and keep trying to sleep, because, like I said, it'll just can increase your anxiety and get your stress hormones going and all that. So you can, get up, you can go into a different room and just, I've seen it described as try not to sleep. Just tell yourself, I'm not going to try to sleep right now. I'm going to just go do something relaxing, go do something kind of mindless, and just give up trying to sleep, and then kind of just repeat that process. So I recommend the stimulus control, but I try not to make it as rigid, like you said, as some people teach it. So I believe it works, but I just try to kind of just make it less of a chore, and just something easy I can go do just to distract myself for a little while.
Perfect. And you mentioned separately here that your wife, and you have a business partner, and the three of you have like a coaching business, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my wife and our business partner, they're both pediatric sleep consultants. So they work with a lot of parents and their children, because there's obviously a lot of children out there who aren't sleeping well, especially right now with COVID. They're seeing a lot of shifting patterns of sleep, and kids who aren't sleeping as well. So it seems like adults and kids are kind of struggling right now. So we're just trying to help people of different age groups to kind of get things back under control.
Yeah. And now, I'm sure you have a lot of insight because of your wife and your business partner, but how similar do you feel that what you do is to what they do?
I think from what I've seen, it seems very similar, especially with kind of older kids too. But yeah, it's a lot of the same things. I mean, it's a lot of sleep hygiene. You want the kids' rooms to be dark. You want the kids to follow a routine because they thrive on routine, just like adults do. So a lot of the tips and a lot of the kind of the sleep hygiene stuff is very similar. It's just, they have different sleep needs than adults do. And a lot of it is kind of dealing with the parents' anxiety too. Because a lot of the parents have anxiety about how their kids are sleeping, and they're stressed out and they're tired. And so it's kind of coaching the parents and sort of relieving their anxiety so that they can, be able to think a little bit more clear-headed, while they're trying to help their kids sleep. And so from what I've seen, like once everything clicks and the parents are feeling more confident, and then I think the kids pick up on that. And then you just, once it all works, you see huge relief from the parents because their child is getting better sleep, and the parents are getting better sleep, and just all these struggles that they've had with naps or nighttime are just subside. And I think once that happens, it's kind of it seems like a miracle at first, just because you've been deep in it for so long.
100%. And then just I just for everyone that I know you, I think you I don't know if you and I have talked about it before, but just for kind of like everybody tuning in there, I think it's like we talked about with stimulus control, that anything that leads you to a place of less effort, trying less, is
Mhm.
super, super helpful. And if that includes like keeping it dim and cool, if that makes you feel good and less pressure, that's great. I think I'm always like a little bit worried that when you go too much into sleep hygiene, that can become an effort too, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think, in my day job as a sleep doctor, I see kids and adult students. It's really interesting because I think when it comes to, like you said, older kids and adults, it's virtually the same thing. But in a younger child, like if you have like the 3 or 5 year old, it's
Mhm.
often like the parents are like, he doesn't want to sleep. He just wants to stay up all the time. And then it's like, that's not insomnia at all. It's like the opposite of insomnia, right?
Yeah. No, it's true. And yeah, and you see just different, I mean, different parents have different approaches. Like you'll see some parents who they have a 4-year-old and they say, I'm just going to let him decide when he goes to sleep. And so,
Right.
so it's different parenting approaches to play into it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of just a matter of education and coaching basically.
Now, do you, when it comes to your coaching, both the pediatric side and your adult side, you work mostly with local clients or like from all over the world, all the states, or?
We started out more local, but then lately we've worked with people starting from all over the place. So East Coast, West Coast, Central. So we're starting to expand and kind of see more people finding us and working with us from other states. So it's cool to be able to work with people from other areas um, and it's virtually, we're all doing it virtually now. So it's simple and it's pretty nice to have that expanded reach out there.
And what's that? Remind me, it's Sleepably, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'll leave the links to you and etc. in the description. So anyone that would like to work with you or just get in touch with you can do that.
Well, thank you.
All right. Very cool. Any concluding remarks, Seth?
No, just thanks for having me on. I enjoy your podcast and yeah, hope everybody out there just gets better sleep during these times. And if not, you can always seek help. I wish that I had, gotten help sooner and really figured out my problems sooner. So if you have any problems, now is the time to do it so that they don't linger for too long.
Sounds perfect. Thanks so much for coming on, Seth.
Thank you very much.